Most people believe they spend money rationally. They assume purchases are the result of conscious decisions, needs, priorities, or occasional rewards. This belief is wrong. A large portion of everyday spending is not the result of deliberate choice, but of invisible psychological triggers that operate automatically. The real financial problem is not low income or lack of discipline. It is the fact that many spending decisions happen without awareness. People think they are in control because each individual purchase seems small and justified. In reality, these decisions follow predictable behavioral patterns that quietly undermine long term financial outcomes. Consider a simple example: an extra $10 here, $15 there, a subscription that feels negligible, convenience fees that seem harmless. On a monthly basis, this often adds up to $300, $500 in unplanned or unnecessary spending. Over a year, that becomes $3,600, $6,000. Over 10 years, $36,000, $60,000. These numbers are not extreme scenarios. They are the result of ordinary behavior. Most people assume that unnecessary spending only applies to impulsive or careless individuals. That assumption is incorrect. High earners, financially educated people, and disciplined professionals are often just as vulnerable. The difference is not intelligence, but exposure to triggers that bypass rational evaluation. The reason this problem goes unnoticed is simple. The spending feels reasonable in the moment. The brain evaluates purchases in isolation, not as part of a long-term system. Each decision is framed as small, temporary, or deserved. The cumulative effect is never calculated. Another reason people believe they are doing everything right is budgeting. Many rely on budgets to control spending, assuming that having categories equals control. But budgets often fail to address the psychological drivers behind spending. When emotional or environmental triggers activate, the budget becomes flexible, postponed, or ignored. The decision still happens, just with a later justification. The financial consequences of this behavior are subtle but severe. Money that could have been saved, invested, or used to reduce long-term stress is consistently redirected towards short-term gratification, not because people want to sabotage themselves, but because the system they operate in is designed to encourage spending without friction. Modern payment systems amplify the issue. Digital wallets, one-click purchases, subscriptions, and buy now, pay later remove the feeling of loss from spending. When the pain of paying is reduced, spending increases. This is not an opinion. It is a documented behavioral effect. Less friction leads to higher consumption. Most people misdiagnose the problem. They believe they need more willpower, stricter rules, or higher income. In reality, willpower is not a reliable financial strategy. Income growth often increases spending rather than reducing the problem. The underlying triggers remain active. The core issue is not that people spend money. Spending is unavoidable. The issue is that spending decisions are shaped by forces most people never analyze. As long as those forces remain invisible, financial control remains incomplete. In the next part, we will examine what these hidden triggers actually are, how they operate in everyday situations, and why standard financial advice fails to neutralize them. To understand why hidden spending triggers are so effective, it is necessary to look at three underlying factors: how income is structured, how people behave around money, and the absence of a clear financial system. These elements work together to make unnecessary spending feel normal and unavoidable. First, income is typically perceived as recurring and stable. Most people receive money on a predictable schedule, weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly, because income feels renewable, spending feels reversible. A purchase today is subconsciously justified by the assumption that more money will arrive soon. This mindset reduces the perceived cost of individual decisions. Spending is evaluated against the next paycheck, not against long-term financial goals. Second, behavior plays a central role. People do not experience money loss symmetrically. Losing $20 feels worse than gaining $20 feels good, but only when the loss is visible. Modern spending removes that visibility. Digital payments, subscriptions, and delayed billing separate the purchase decision from the financial consequence. When the consequence is delayed or abstract, the brain treats spending as low risk. Consider a practical example. A professional earning $5,000 per month subscribes to multiple services, streaming platforms, cloud storage, premium apps, delivery memberships. Each costs $10, $25 per month. Individually, none of them feels significant. Together, they total $180 per month or $260 per year. Over 5 years, that is more than $10,000 spent without a single deliberate decision to allocate that amount. Another example involves convenience spending. Coffee, food delivery, ride sharing, and express fees often replace cheaper alternatives. A $6 coffee instead of a $1 homemade option 5 times a week costs roughly $300 per year. The spending does not feel impulsive, it feels efficient, and yet the financial impact is real and recurring. The third factor is the lack of a system. Many people manage money transaction by transaction rather than structurally. They track balances, not behavior. As long as the account does not reach zero, spending is implicitly permitted. Without predefined rules for what money is meant to do, every decision is evaluated emotionally and situationally. This is why standard advice often fails. Track your expenses creates awareness, but does not change behavior when triggers are emotional or environmental. Use a budget assumes rational adherence under stress, fatigue, or social pressure. Just save more ignores the fact that saving is what happens after spending, not before. Even higher income does not solve the issue. As income increases, exposure to spending triggers also increases. Better access to convenience, higher social expectations, more premium options. Without a system, spending scales with income. The problem persists because unnecessary spending is rarely framed as a system failure. It is treated as a personal weakness or lack of discipline. In reality, the environment is optimized to encourage spending with minimal resistance, while saving and investing require conscious effort. As long as income remains reactive and spending remains frictionless, hidden triggers will continue to dominate financial outcomes. In the next part, we will identify the most common spending mistakes that result from these triggers and examine their long-term financial consequences over 5, 10, and 20 years. When spending behavior is examined over time, several recurring mistakes appear consistently. These mistakes are not tied to income level. They are decision-based, structural, and reinforced by everyday environments. Their impact becomes visible only when viewed across long-time horizons. Mistake 1. Treating small expenses as irrelevant. Most people dismiss small, frequent purchases as financially harmless. A few dollars here or there do not feel like decisions worth analyzing. The problem is not the amount, but the frequency, consequences. After 5 years, $3,000, $5,000 spent with no retained value. After 10 years, $6,000, $10,000 redirected away from savings or investment. After 20 years, $12,000 to $20,000 lost to frictionless consumption. The damage is cumulative, not dramatic, and therefore easy to ignore. Mistake 2. Separating spending from long-term goals. Many people plan goals such as financial security or early retirement, but daily spending decisions are never evaluated against those goals. Purchases are justified in isolation. Comparison. Scenario A spends $250 per month on discretionary convenience. Scenario B redirects the same $250 into a low-cost investment, earning a modest 5% annually. After 20 years, Scenario B has roughly $100,000. Scenario A has nothing measurable. The difference is not discipline, but alignment. Mistake 3. Assuming higher income solves the problem. A common belief is that unnecessary spending will stop once income increases. In reality, spending scales with income unless constrained by structure. Consequences. After 5 years, lifestyle inflation absorbs raises. After 10 years, financial stress persists despite higher earnings. After 20 years, income history looks strong, net worth does not. The trigger remains unchanged, only the numbers increase. Mistake 4, relying on willpower instead of systems. Willpower is inconsistent. It declines with stress, fatigue, and decision overload. When spending requires no friction, willpower becomes an unreliable control mechanism. Result, spending increases during busy periods, emotional stress, or convenience driven situations. Over time, this creates predictable financial leakage. Mistake 5, mislabeling triggered spending as choice. Many purchases feel voluntary but are in fact responses to cues, notifications, social comparison, urgency framing, or convenience. When behavior is misidentified as choice, it is never corrected. Long term effect. Spending decisions remain reactive instead of intentional. The long term consequences of these mistakes are not dramatic failures, but quiet underperformance. After 5 years, the cost feels manageable. After 10 years, opportunity loss becomes visible. After 20 years, the gap between expected and actual financial position is structural. The critical insight is this: the issue is not income, intelligence, or motivation. People with vastly different incomes make the same errors. The difference lies in whether spending is governed by systems or by triggers. Money does not disappear because people are careless. It disappears because decisions are made automatically in environments designed to encourage spending. Until those decisions are addressed structurally, the outcome remains the same. In the next part, we will examine how to neutralize these triggers using practical financial mechanics without relying on willpower or unrealistic behavioral change. If unnecessary spending is driven by hidden triggers rather than conscious choice, then the solution cannot rely on discipline or constant self control. A workable solution must remove decisions from the moment they occur and replace them with a structure that operates automatically. The core solution is simple in concept: separate money into predefined roles before spending decisions arise. This is not budgeting in the traditional sense. It is a structural allocation that limits the influence of triggers by reducing available choices. The first component is pre allocation. Income should be divided immediately when it arrives. One portion is assigned to fixed obligations, one to long term objectives, and one to discretionary use. The key point is timing. Allocation happens before spending begins, not after, when money already has a role. Triggers lose effectiveness because fewer funds are exposed to impulsive decisions. The second component is automation. Long term money, savings, investing, or debt reduction is moved automatically. Automation means no monthly decision, no emotional negotiation, and no reliance on motivation. Once set, the system runs independently. This reduces error rates significantly because it removes human inconsistency from the process. The third component is friction management. Spending should require more effort than saving. This is the opposite of how most financial setups work. Today, spending is frictionless, while saving requires intention. Reversing this dynamic changes outcomes without changing behavior. For example, discretionary funds can be kept in a separate account or payment method, limiting how often they are accessed. A practical example illustrates the mechanics. A person earning $4,500 per month automatically directs $600 into long-term accounts on payday. The remaining income covers obligations and discretionary use. Because the $600 never enters the spending environment, it is never evaluated against short-term desires. Triggers still exist, but they operate on a smaller base. Why is this solution stable rather than risky? Because it does not depend on prediction. It does not require market timing, complex strategies, or behavioral perfection. It relies on consistent execution and time. The system assumes that triggers will continue to exist and designs around that reality. Another stability factor is scalability. The structure does not change when income changes. If income increases, the same rules apply. This prevents lifestyle inflation from absorbing all gains. The system adjusts proportionally, not emotionally. Importantly, this approach does not eliminate discretionary spending. It contains it. By defining a boundary, Spending becomes intentional rather than reactive. People can spend without guilt or second guessing because the long-term objectives are already protected. This method also reduces cognitive load. Fewer decisions mean less fatigue, fewer rationalizations, and fewer exceptions. Over time, consistency replaces effort. Financial outcomes improve not because behavior becomes perfect, but because the system absorbs imperfections. The mistake many people make is trying to fight triggers directly. That approach fails because triggers are environmental and constant. The effective response is to redesign the environment in which decisions occur. In the final part, we will bring this structure together into a clear system, show what changes after 1, 5, and 10 years, and outline exactly what actions can be taken immediately to regain control over spending behavior. When all elements are brought together, the core issue becomes clear. Unnecessary spending is not caused by lack of discipline or insufficient income. It is the result of a system where money is exposed to triggers before it is given a purpose. As long as this structure remains unchanged, spending decisions will continue to be reactive rather than intentional. A functional system can be summarized in a few clear steps. First, define roles for your money before it is spent. Every dollar should have a predefined function the moment income arrives. Long-term objectives are not funded with what is left over. They are funded first. This single change removes most spending decisions from the influence of triggers. Second, automate what should not be negotiated. Savings, investments, and debt reduction must operate automatically. Automation is not about convenience, it is about consistency. When these actions happen without input, they are no longer vulnerable to mood, stress, or environmental pressure. Third, contain discretionary spending instead of trying to eliminate it. Spending is not the enemy. Unbounded spending is. By limiting discretionary money to a defined amount and a separate channel, spending becomes visible and finite. Triggers still exist, but their financial impact is capped. Fourth, reduce friction for long-term decisions and increase it for short-term ones. Saving and investing should be easy. Spending should require a moment of awareness. This reversal aligns behavior with long-term outcomes without requiring constant self-control. What changes over time? After 1 year, the financial difference may appear modest. The real change is structural. Spending feels calmer because long-term goals are already addressed. Decisions are clearer, and financial anxiety is reduced because money has defined roles. After 5 years, the effects become measurable. Automatic allocation compounds. Opportunity cost is reduced. The gap between intentional and triggered spending becomes visible. Financial progress no longer depends on constant effort. After 10 years, the difference is structural. The same income produces very different outcomes depending on whether spending was reactive or contained. Long-term assets exist not because spending was eliminated, but because it was limited by design. What should be done now? List all income sources and define a fixed allocation for long-term objectives. Set up automatic transfers immediately after income arrives. Separate discretionary spending into a distinct account or payment method. Remove saved payment information where possible to increase spending friction. Review results annually, not monthly, and adjust only the structure, not impulses. The financial mistake most people make is not spending money. It is allowing spending decisions to be shaped by triggers rather than by intention. Once spending is contained within a system, control returns without effort. This approach does not promise dramatic change. It produces predictable results. Over time, predictability is what builds financial stability, not willpower, not income, but structure.